Okay, so I know that I'm very late to this record, and I apologize. The band actually reached out to me well in advance and gave me an advance copy, and it was released, halfway through May, and here we are near the end of June, and I am only getting to it now. I feel so bad, but this is the thing, right? Like, this spring coming into the summer, we've been inundated with so much amazing progressive rock music that I had to really strategize my time, and I feel so bad that I left this one kind of on the floor because it might be one of the best of the batch. So, yeah, let's dive into this one. A Shout into the Void by Great Wide Nothing. So Great Wide Nothing is an American progressive rock band getting their start in the later parts of the 2010, dropping their first debut record, The View from Olympus, back in 2019. Now, I didn't know about them until their 1-2 punch of Hymns for Hungry Spirits Volumes 1 and 2. And man, the Hymns for Hungry Spirits Volume 2 has one of my favorite progressive rock epics of all time, which is To Find the Light Part 2. Listening to that track, it really showcases me. It really demonstrates to me that these guys know how to construct a prog masterpiece. They know how to construct a prog epic, and I was just so excited to hear what they have next. They are masters of this retro progressive rock without it being too symphonic or too derivative of what came before. They're kind of in the same vein as like the Baroque Project or Southern Empire, or somewhere around those lines, where, yeah, you've got this kind of, they're flirting with the symphonic rock, but it's definitely more rooted in the rock era of it. The rock? Yeah, we'll say the rock. So here we come, right off of the heels from their 2023 release of the Hymns for the Hungry Spirits Volume 2, and I was excited. I was ready. And when this album came out, it really surprised me because it kind of did a little bit of a bait and switch. I know my buddy Ian over at Rhyme Signatures calls this the kind of intersection between punk and progressive rock, and it's like when those two ideologies are almost diametrically opposed, to think that they could kind of blend together in this kind of sense, and especially with a band like Great Wide Nothing, which has always approached their music in, they definitely had rocker tones, but it wasn't necessarily in like the more punky area. And we've seen progressive rock artists try the punk in the past, and it's always been less than stellar. I think that's what kind of pushed me off, because when I first listened to this, the first track of Utopia really hits you with a punch. It comes out of the gates swinging, basically saying like, what the fuck is the point of all of this when we're trying our best and all we seem to be doing is slipping back? And it's charged, it's energetic, it's very in your face, it's very punky in that way. And a lot of tracks on this record kind of have that flavor of it being very aggressive, very antagonistic, very against the grain. And upon my first listen, I was just like, man, this is a little too aggressive for my taste right now, especially when I love aggressive music, like I love metal and whatnot. But even I was just like, okay, I came to the Great Wide Nothing for more of those, big epic moments, and there doesn't really appear to be any of those great epic moments, so that's why I kind of put it on the shelf. But it kept gnawing at me. There were moments on this record that kept gnawing at me, and I was just like, okay, fine, I'll get back into it, and I'm so glad that I did, because, man, what these guys are able to command and control. They took the energy, and they took that raw power of punk, and infused it in the progressive rock landscape. Even though none of these tracks are over, say, 7 minutes or so, like the longest one being the instrumental of 1,000 Eyes being the longest track, it still has the essence of prog on it. It still has that style, that oomph that I come to really appreciate and love. And honestly, it's those last 4 tracks, 1,000 Eyes, the Parting of Ways, You're Not In, and the title track, A Shout Into the Void, that really made me come back to this record time and time again. But first, let's talk about the first half of this record: Utopia, Rules of Engagement, Chain of Command, and Brain on Fire. And these tracks are fun. You know, they are great fun. Utopia, I already said, starts off with a punch. It's very aggressive, very in your face. Rules of Engagement have that same kind of flavor to it, but it's a little bit more palatable. It's a little bit more, digestible. Honestly, Chain of Command is so much fun. It has this bounce and it has this flavor. This is the style of Great Wide Nothing that I really appreciate. You know, it's got this bounce. It's got this flavor. It's got this really fun jive that I just find so infectious. And Brain on Fire is kind of like their ballad a little bit, but man, what I love of the keyboards, and I think I should have really said this before, like the three superstars, you've kind of got the two singer-songwriters, more of the brain power here, Daniel Graham on bass and vocals, and Dylan Proper on keyboards and vocals. The two of them are just doing a fantastic job going back and forth, and man, I want to talk about Dylan's keyboard work. Like, his keyboard work is otherworldly. Like, not only is he able to command the atmosphere and command the overall vibe of the track, he's also able to take center stage, and we see that so much on Brain on Fire. It's a really stripped down piano works where there's, not a lot of overlay of sound, not a whole lot of texture on it. It's literally just the sound of the piano, and his commanding presence on there is so infectious and so immediate that I couldn't help but absolutely fall in love with it. But really, it's that second half of this record, starting with 1000 Eyes, that make me just gush and perk up my ears. I really wish that this band would put out a vinyl edition of this record, because I would buy it in a heartbeat, literally just for 1000 Eyes. And this is where I want to talk about kind of the little bit of the unsung hero on here, Jeff Matthews on the drums and vocals. We've got the 3-part harmonies throughout this, but within this instrumental piece, this is where you can really hear that commanding presence. Like, there are so many moments on here that he's able to switch between the punk rock rhythm section of just that really driven, really quick bump, 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 that relentless, unyieldy, very in your face. But then he's able to also command the more proggy aspects of it that have this very intricate rhythm section, that unyieldy structure that progressive rock tends to have, but also have this little bit of a loosey-goosey jam session. And man, the build-ups, the payoffs of 1000 Eyes leave me speechless. It's just so immediate and so powerful. That brings us to the Parting of Ways, that again kind of bring in the best music that we've heard from Great Wide Nothing up to this point. Like, I was left speechless in so many different eras within these two tracks. I could not help but just, once again, gush and kind of like take off my headphones every once in a while and be like, these were the same guys that did the songs for Hungry Spirits, or hymns for Hungry Spirits. Like, it's almost like a completely different band. This is why I want to praise Great Wide Nothing, because they don't just stay in their lane. They try different things. They experiment. They're going off into different directions. And this is very much seen on You're Not In, which feels almost like a My Chemical Romance track. It feels like something that was lifted off of Danger Days. There are moments of Sing, there are moments of Scarecrow, and Danger Days is, one of, if not my favorite record from My Chemical Romance. But seeing that they're able to blend that mid-2000s very power emo song structures here in a progressive rock album, I'm like, it shouldn't work, but yet here we are listening to one of the best tracks off of the album. So the album itself ends with the title track, and I'll admit, the title track was very similar to Utopia, where it started off in like an area that I wasn't quite sure about. Utopia starts off in this very dark, very aggressive, very antagonistic landscape that then eventually warms up and becomes a little bit more friendly. This is almost the opposite, where it starts off very somber, very sweet, very, atmospheric. And at first I'm like, oh, do we have the first dud of the record? Do we have the first moment of this record where I'm like, I'm not quite sure about it. But it turns into something extremely beautiful. Like, this is where I really love this style of music, because all throughout this, the overall concept is a shout into the void. We're doing all this work. Does it even mean anything? We're doing all this hollering, and but it doesn't seem to be about anything. And Shout Into the Void is that optimistic, we do it because we have to. We do it because if we don't, we will perish. If we don't do it, we will die. And at the end of the day, maybe not in our lifetime, maybe not in our children's lifetime, it will get better. And it's that hope, that unrelenting hope, that is kind of a unifying human trait. And that's why I love albums like this, where it covers all the darkness, it covers all the bleak and the uncertainty and the almost inevitability of the demise, but it also showcases that unyielding hope that we all kind of have, and it's like why we do what we do. This album wouldn't have been made if it wasn't for hope. So yeah, it kind of brought everything full force, and it made me want to re-listen to it right from the beginning. So yeah. This was an album that really shook me, in the best way. This was kind of an album that I did not see being on my bingo card as being one of the best of 2025. But here we are. This is like every time I think that progressive rock or even retro progressive rock, couldn't give us something amazing. And, we've kind of reached the bottom of the cream of the crop. It's like, oops, all cream of the crop. Another album comes out and just knocks me off my feet. So, yeah, it's for that reason that I'll say A Shout Into the Void by Great Wide Nothing is an album that I absolutely love with my whole heart. This is very easily their best work. It's one of those things, right? It's like, I don't know how Great Wide Nothing is going to top this album, but I'm almost going to guarantee that the next album is going to be even better, because they're on that trajectory. They've got that juice, they've got that momentum going. And I can just see their next one being even better. But I can't conceive of what that would sound like because of how good this record is. If you've been sleeping on this record, I highly recommend going out and checking it. If you're a fan of progressive rock, if you're a fan of challenging music, if you're a fan of dynamic music, you're going to love this record. You really, really are. I can't give this one higher praise. And yeah, I absolutely love this record, and I know you will too. So that's what I've got for A Shout Into the Void by Great Wide Nothing. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about this record? I know it's been out for a little bit, and I'm so saddened that I didn't listen to it before now. But I want to know what you guys think about this record. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, please let me know by commenting down below. And I think that's where I'm going to leave it for right now. So I want to thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.